Oh, there's my mic. We'll call this meeting to order. Attendance has been taken.
The roll's been taken.
Thank you. Staff and reviewing public of the electronic participation policy for virtual meetings. Staff and delegates are reminded to keep their video and microphones off until requested by the moderator or members of the committee. All rules for delegations under the city's procedural bylaw continue to apply. Further, in the event of a connection or service interruption occurs that affects quorum, we may recess the meeting for up to 15 minutes to regain quorum. If quorum is not achieved, the meeting will be adjourned. Excuse me. The full corporate policy 50 regarding electronic virtual participation in meetings is available online to review. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest for items appearing on the agenda? Seeing none. Do we have Councillor Vanderstaal here? He's not showing up on the Zoom feed. Okay, he must be having internet problems. Okay, prior to separation of items, please note that item 511, Wilfrid Laurier University request for funding support for a cultural hub project at One Market, and item 512, 2022 property tax policy are already separated as there are delegations for these items. Members of the committee, are there other items for consideration or consent items you wish to separate for discussion purposes? Okay, may I have a mover and a, before I go to that, I want to separate item 5.1.3. Seeing no other separations, can I have a mover and a seconder for items of consideration and consent not separated for discussion? Moved by Councillor Utley, seconded by Mayor Davis. Call the vote.
So all of the items subject to the vote are as follows. Item 5.1.4 quarterly reserve and reserve fund update. 5.1.5 temporary borrowing for the municipality. 5.1.6 update on capital projects. 5.1.7 budget items balanced by reserve fund policy, and 5.2.1 the minutes. All items not separated have carried on a recorded vote of 3-1. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Utley, Councillor Martin. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter.
Okay, we have two delegations today. I'll ask Heidi Northwood on behalf of Wilfrid Laurier University to come forward to speak to item 5.1.1 regarding Wilfrid Laurier's request for funding support for cultural hub project at One Market. If you could please state your name and address. You have 10 minutes inclusive of questions from the committee.
Thanks very much. Heidi Northwood from Wilfrid Laurier University. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for your time today. I have just a few slides to share with you in order to outline the Laurier proposal to create with the city a cultural hub in the downtown in One Market. This will just be a high-level background to the ask. Next slide, please. This project is in strong alignment with the city's plans to build the arts and cultural ecosystem in Brantford. And of course, this is based upon the municipal cultural plan from 2014. Alongside, of course, the Sanderson Center, Harmony Square, the Glenhurst Art Gallery, vibrant dance community, community theater, music, our fantastic museums and heritage properties. It is also in strong alignment with the work of the Downtown Improvement Task Force. The project has three elements, all of which involve the area in One Market, in and surrounding the three movie theaters on the outside. The first, to renovate the first theater to become an art house movie theater in partnership with Princess Theatres up in Kitchener-Waterloo, and also a second location in Hamilton. The second, to transform the two remaining theaters into one large 250-seat performance space that is large enough to allow for dance, theater, symphony, and other performative arts, and has sufficient backstage area to allow proper access for performances. And the third element, a white cube art gallery nearby the three theaters, where there could be opening night events, festivals, local artists, and can be repurposed for example, the changing areas for dance recitals and competitions. Slide, please. To date, Laurier has invested approximately $63,000 in staff time and hard costs in order to move this project ahead. And we're very excited to have received the unanimous vote of support from Council to move ahead and explore this further in September of this year. And so now we're officially requesting $130,000 to engage an architectural firm that specializes in theater renovations to complete a planning and renovation assessment, taking into full consideration the technical requirements that for this sort of space and also the needs of the performance communities that the space would serve. Next slide, please. The benefits of this for the city, community, and Laurier are significant. I've already mentioned the alignment with existing city projects and initiatives, but this project is, to my mind and to our minds, in essence, a linchpin, I think, for downtown revitalization post-pandemic. It answers a need already identified by the city and community in a cost-effective way, relatively speaking. In particular, the mid-sized performance space. The benefits would also, of course, include increasing the foot traffic in downtown core, which would lead to increased perceptions of vitality and safety for all. It would be increased spending for businesses in the downtown, insofar as people would come downtown for these events and then want to have dinner or spend more time in downtown for other events that are happening there. It would help Laurier with our recruitment and the success of other leasing ventures in one market that would also serve the community, including what we are looking into ourselves, a street food market, which would be licensed, as well as a general store, which is a first stage to a pop-up market. But the first stage would be a general store where local artisans and producers could actually have stuff in the mall to sell for people who would also be there for the performance spaces. And the next slide, please. A few words about next steps. If this is approved, and after the architectural firm does its work and we have a better idea of how much we're actually talking about in terms of the renovation work, once we know that, we'll be able to go full steam ahead in looking for funds from different levels of government. As you can see there on the slide is Canada Cultural Spaces Fund, Ontario Arts Council, Canada Community Revitalization Fund, and so on. All of these have, as is listed on this slide, mandates that actually would fit with the kind of work that we would be doing together with the city. And in terms of timelines, the absolute fastest it could possibly occur if everything lined up completely perfectly would be 2 years, but it would probably take a little bit longer. I'm happy to talk if anyone wants to know about the economic impacts that Laurier has had in the downtown core and also the sort of state of where we're at right now, but I will leave that for the question period if anyone would like to have that information in front of them. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of the delegation? Councillor Ratley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Northwood, very good to see you again and talk about this exciting project. You mentioned at the beginning, I think, that you would partner with Kitchener. And I'm assuming that's Kitchener-Waterloo,
Yes.
Laurier campus. Okay. And what would their role?
Oh.
Okay.
Yes, sorry. For the Art House movie theater, we're actually talking about a partnership with Princess Theatre, which would not be the same as the business operations of such the whole performance space would be through our ancillary services department, of which is a large part of the organization. It's the business side of Laurier. That's the operating part of it, but the movie theater itself, the programming would be done through experienced art house movie theater people who are in charge of the Princess Theatre, which is independent, as well as then the theater that's on the east end of Hamilton.
I visited Princess Theatre on a couple of occasions or so, and it's a very good operation for sure. So that fills me with a lot of confidence of how this will be run. Is it too early yet to look for sponsors for each of the three units?
At this point, I think it is best to have a clearer idea of how much the costs will be. But to be honest, once we have the approval to go ahead and work with the architectural firm through the funding, if it pleases council tonight, that's I think a first step to start doing the kind of quiet work in the background to start those conversations amongst friends of this sort of endeavor, both within the community and beyond.
And lastly, through you, Mr. Chair, is there an arts program at the Brantford campus where students can practice their acting abilities or singing, whatever it may be?
No, there is. There is, and the Waterloo campus has a film studies program, which is a possibility. And of course, there's a very strong reputation music program, a set of music programs on the Waterloo campus. There's already been interest expressed, in particular by the music faculty, for some kind of performance use of the performance space in order to benefit the community. What we do have on the Brantford campus is a digital media and journalism program, and it's through some of the hands-on work in that program that I can imagine there would be a real interest in working on, for example, some of the technical aspects of the theater, like lights and sound. But in fact, in another way of thinking about this is indeed long-term, with this kind of facility in the downtown core and part and adjacent to the programming that is regular Laurier space, there's a real possibility, I think, for moving and exploring other directions in that possibilities in that direction.
Dr. Northwood, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr.
Most
Chair.
welcome.
Mayor Davis? No? Okay, I have a question. Once this project is up and running, do you see this as a profit center for the university, or something that's going to be breaking even, or something that's going to require subsidy from the city?
Thank you for the question. The way that we have put together a business plan is actually to make this self-sufficient. Now that involves, as is outlined in the longer proposal that I didn't speak to all the details tonight, that involves having the Art House movie theater, as well as revenue from the concession stand, as well as very careful planning with regard to providing access for that space to the dance community for recitals and competitions at particular times of the year. That will allow us to break even.
Okay, Councillor Vanderstelt.
Thank you, Chair Martin. My apologies. Somebody actually switched off my Wi-Fi in the beginning. I'm sorry about that. And I'm painfully aware of the size of my head compared to yours right now. I'm sorry for that too. Dr. Northwood, thank you. If I probably missed it, but maybe the public missed it too. First of all, thank you for your drive and your passions for Brantford and the transition that we're going through, and your continued commitment to that. We appreciate it. I appreciate it very much. Strictly in terms of the numbers of people that are coming to the core, if we would support you and continue to support you and work with you with all of our other agencies as well who are contributing. Can you give us a rough estimate? Is it possible at all, a rough estimate of how many more people will be drawn to the core because of this interest in the Arts Hub over the next, let's say, 2-3 years?
I have not run those numbers before, and I don't think we have done that yet, anyone in the institution, but the idea is to have this, the movie theaters be running once it's up and running well, right now, the way that we've modeled it is 4 nights a week to get it started. And once the community starts seeing it as a destination to come to all the time, then reevaluating and seeing if it can be running 7 days a week. But the other possibility for the Art House Movie Theater is to also use that as space for guest lectures and all the rest. So that space alone has 100 seats. And the way that we have modeled it is about half capacity for making it work. As for the mid-sized performance space, again, we're hoping that it would be running certainly year-round. And in particular, of course, emphasis on weekend nights, because that's when people have a chance to be out and about. But the capacity is there for more than that. So, and if you're thinking about 250 seats there, and say half capacity for larger events or for the events that have draw, then I mean, we could do a back of the envelope calculation, but certainly if you add to that the other things that are happening in the downtown with the restaurants,
Right.
businesses as they're opening up, and the kind of retail that hopefully this will also support, I think we're talking about in conjunction with Sanderson and Harmony Square events, et cetera. I think we're talking about a big step forward towards making downtown a destination that people want to come to, and because there's things to do. That's what we heard loud and clear when we did some of the community outreach about a year and a half ago, is that people want things to do in downtown, long and short of it, right? And the more things there are to do downtown, the more the larger the diverse groups of people see it as a place they want to come.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Heidi. I look forward to it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. We'll be debating this shortly.
Thank
And
you
with
very
that-
much.
Hey, and with that, we'll ask Fraser Yates and Rose Reese to come forward to speak to item 5.1.2 regarding property tax policy. Please state your names and addresses and speak to the item. You have 10 minutes inclusive of questions.
I'm not to touch the mic. Is that right? Okay. My name is Rosemary Reese. I've been a longtime resident at 144 Murray Street on the corner of Colburn and Murray in Brantford. I'm just going to give a brief history of our presence on the corner of Colburn and Murray. In 1958, my parents came from Italy, and within 10 years, were able to purchase property at 475 Colburn Street. And then shortly thereafter at 428 Colburn Street. We built a family business, pizza store. Our family lived upstairs in pretty cramped quarters by today's standards. And then we were able to buy the building on the corner of Colburn and Murray. In 2017, on June 4th, both buildings were demolished by a fire. We lost our family business. We lost our home. I lost my pottery studio. My husband lost his recording studio. And after 2.5 years of waiting for the property to be rebuilt, the building to be rebuilt, we got our tax bill. And these were all involuntary improvements to our property, and the price, the jump on our taxes has been such that it may force us to move from where we've lived our whole lives and hope to continue to live. I will pass you on to the numbers guy. Go.
Not a numbers guy. Fraser Yates, 144 Murray Street. As Rose said, we both had successful businesses before, as well as secondary businesses that we lost during the fire. And we thought over what we wanted to do as we were both getting on in age a little bit when we were about to rebuild. And we thought that we would move back there. We like the neighborhood. We love the neighborhood. It's a crazy neighborhood, but we love the neighborhood. And so we decided to build a smaller home, a retirement home that we thought we would be able to stay at for a long time. We went through a lot of building problems down there anyways with, well, my business wouldn't be able to happen. We were supposed to have a full basement, but because of streets and soil erosion, half of that building you see in the basement is filled with concrete. So we lost a significant amount of space in our basement, which I was going to convert into a full studio. So that kiboshed that. The foundation was another $30,000. If you want to see what $30,000 of concrete, come to my basement and you can see what it looks like. I don't know if I sent this in. I don't know if you have them. It was a list of the old building and new buildings I had sent in to the clerk, and she said that you would have those sheets available to you. I don't know if you have them at all. Wow. So just to go through it quickly, we did at that point as well, there was a stable on the property. It's on a corner. And so there's an access to the back of Maria's Pizzeria, and our building is here. There's the stables that you see downtown all the time. It basically looks like a two-car garage. We severed that off, which was approximately 20. These numbers are approximate numbers I'm giving you. We sold that to the pizzeria, and that's approximately 20% of our property that we did. I'll just go through this. The old, just quickly, I guess you can interrupt me anytime if there's questions. The old building, approximately 5,800 square feet. Again, the new building with the land severed off was 3,400 square feet. In the old building, there was 2 commercial units and 1 3-bedroom apartment, and that was about 3,500 square feet. Just over half of the old, I don't know if anyone remembers the old building or not, but they did have residences in the back. That's the way they ran them. And then they would go, there was access to the stores. So the building was 1895, I believe.
1905.
1905. So that was there. The residence was 2,300. It was a large house. It was a 4-bedroom house. Those taxes were approximately, and Pat Telfer's here, he'll probably correct me on this. It was about $8,200, and it was assessed in 2014, I believe, at $500,000. So what we decided to build was a retirement home, and we went into 3,400 square feet. There is 1 commercial unit at the front. Rosemary runs her pottery studio out of that. There is no basement in that. There was a basement throughout that whole old building. Our residence now is 1,900 square feet, and that includes a 570 square foot deck that's upstairs. And I don't say that to show off or anything, but it's just that they built we have 2 bedrooms upstairs that they built on the street. The architect, MMMC Architects, wanted to keep the street presence of the building there. So the commercial space, both Maria's and our building, are tall enough, and they match. So, and it's 10-foot ceilings upstairs. So on the outside on Colburn Street and then along Murray Street are bedrooms and a bathroom, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. And then there's a space in the middle. The architect decided it would be nice for us to have a deck, which was great because we initially wanted to have a backyard. We thought at this point we could do that but we weren't allowed to because the way the zoning is, and we're commercial / residential, we had to offer parking, which I believe at some point was 15 parking spots that the city required, which there was never ever 15 spots there. So it was settled on 5. So we do have about 10 or 12 feet out of the back of our house that we have small area downstairs and a larger area upstairs, because again, we wanted to have a backyard, but we're not permitted to do that. So under the taxes, from what I understand from AMPAC, that 570 square feet doesn't have the same impact financially. I hope I'm getting this correct, as it would as up indoors, I guess, because it's an outdoor deck. So we're down to 1,400, less than 1,400 square foot house. We complied with the city wanted a sunshine corner, I was told, just because there's so many accidents on Colburn and Murray and Colburn and Dalhousie, because you can't see around them. So I think we could have contested that, but we decided to comply. And so we lost another, probably about 35 square feet. So that is on an angle and that opens that corner up. The house was assessed, I believe, in 2020 at $700,000, and our taxes came in, and I don't know if they've been reduced recently, but about $12,100. I've had MPAC there 3 times. They don't want to hear from me anymore. They've had enough. There was no reduction. There were things that they came in and said, we thought there was ceramic. We taxed you for ceramic throughout the whole house. We see that you don't have ceramic. We thought you had a full basement. You only have half a basement. They're the ones that told me about the deck upstairs, how that is considered different than the inside of the house. So they've been out a few times, and so there was a few changes. The gentleman that was there said that, you know, that you don't have ceramic throughout your whole housing. That's fine, but it wasn't going to register thousands of dollars of difference. I'm sure he said it would come down, but it was going to be negligible. So I think that was probably more for their files as opposed to ours. So Rosemary and I, again, as I said, we both lost good paying jobs. I lost mine during or still during the pandemic. And we lost both of our secondary businesses, which during the pandemic, and both of them are the type of businesses where you're interacting with people. So there's just, until Rosemary has started up again, she's been able to do that. With my business, I have to look for a place to do that. I can't do that in our house now, as we lost a lot of this basement to this concrete. So we're coming today to say that, and I've talked to Pat numerous times, when are you kicking us out? We moved in 2020. Our tax bills, I guess it wasn't fully assessed at that point, and I believe it came in around $4,300. And then in November, we got dropped a bomb of about $8,000 for that year. So going into 2021, we were behind $8,000 right off the get-go, even though there was a 4-month period for us to pay that. I just didn't have $8,000 in my back pocket at that point. We've continued to pay $500 a month. That's what we can afford at this point, which still puts it at $6,000 a year. But again, we go $600 a month in debt every month. That 1.25 that's going to get charged to us is going to add up really quickly. When the new year rings in, we'll probably that's 12,000 plus the probably 9. So we'll be over $20,000 in debt when we start the new year. Again, we will be paying $500. That's what we can afford. We've both taken the liberty of saying that's what we can afford. So we've done that, and so that'll come down. But at the end of 2021, we're going to owe the city about $15,000, and then next year it's going to be the same thing, and afterwards, and we're both getting to the point where we wanted to retire. That's just not possible at this point. Just as over $1,000 a month for property taxes. Again, Mr. Telfer and I talked about, would there be any difference if we changed the zoning on it? And that didn't seem to make any difference because of us being in this unique residential / commercial situation. So, yes, and so now, again, we built this with retirement in mind. We're animal lovers, and we have quite a lot of animals, the legal amount of animals. So this space also helps us with that. So for us to look for another place that Rosemary can open her business, and maybe even I can open my business again. Again, we have daytime jobs now. We've acquired them. They're not as lucrative as the jobs we had before. It's difficult. We have a cousin that's in real estate in town, and we've been looking for over a year and a half, and without very much success. The other thing that did come to mind when I was looking at these listings, and again, I did discuss this with Pat.
You've gone over time. If you could wrap it up, it would be appreciated.
Oh, okay. All right. That when we were looking at properties with garages on the back of them that we could turn into a business, those property taxes were for those houses, depending the size of it, $3,400, $3,500, $4,000 a year. Even if you stick the commercial tax, if it's available to do it on that property, that's $9,000 in commercial tax. I have a hard time like that. We could buy a house, have a garage. If it's zoned properly, we can do that. And it doesn't come close to $12,000. So that's the end of the presentation. But
I'll wrap it up. I love my corner. I think they were a really viable part of that neighborhood. We plant flowers and make that corner look so beautiful, and have for the last 30 years. And that's just where I want to stay. And I just hope that we're able to afford it. That's all.
Your presentation didn't really touch on what the issue is that's before us tonight. It was before us as tax policy. Your situation sounds like something you need to take to impact and get a reduction on your taxes. And it sounds like you've already tried that.
we've tried it 3 times.
Yeah.
And again, I talked to Pat.
But how is it possible that our taxes went up without, not in increments, but all of a sudden in one gigantic lump sum, that like on top of a fire that was an absolute unpredictable act.
Yeah.
We didn't raise the property to build a high-rise apartment. Like the building was built in 1905 as a cornerstone. It wasn't just a lost house, it was a lost to this community. It was like another gaping hole in this city that we chose to fill, that we built. We had a great architect. We built to the city's footprint. It took 2.5 years for us to get a roof back over our heads. And the second we opened up our doors to my pottery studio, we were shut down. Well, I think it was 3 weeks into a workshop, and we were shut down by COVID. And on top of this like crazy increase in taxes, that in retrospect, we would have done 100 things different from the time of the fire. But when does your whole life burn down? Like once in a lifetime. We had no point of reference. And all of a sudden, taxes are twice what we were paying.
The other comment that I have, just quickly, and I know you want to hear is that I understand now why a lot of people leave those lots empty downtown for this exact same reason. Because if we had any sort of knowledge about property taxes and knew that was going to happen, I would have left the lot open. And then if someone wanted to purchase it and build, that's fine. But would have not in a million years returned back there had we known that our taxes were gonna go up over 50%.
Okay.
In
Okay.
one jump.
Well, with construction like that, the impact does an assessment, and then that's where things start. So it's unfortunate that your assessment went up the way it did, but that's not something that we have control over at this committee.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, there's probably nothing we can do for you here.
No, I know, but it has a lot to do with the city though.
Yes, it does. We're sorry for your troubles and. Okay. We have a mover and seconder for all separated items on the floor. Councillor Utley, Mayor Davis, thank you. We begin with 5.1.1. Do we have any questions or comments on 5.1.1? I think the delegation was very thorough and answered the questions at that time. Councillor Vanderstel.
Thank you, Chair Martin. If we do go ahead and pull the 150,000 from Casino Legacy Reserve, what is left in that reserve after that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So when we look at casino, we're really looking at the pool of casino funded reserves at this point. So what we had reported to the committee last month, without the estimated fourth quarter amount, would leave a current balance of approximately $4.2 million.
Okay, thank you, Joelle. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That 4.2 million, is there commitments to some of that? Is some of that committed?
The 4.2 million is estimated till the end of the year, and that encompasses all the current year commitments.
Okay.
When we look into next year, we're forecasting revenues that would be equal to the commitments on those funds again next year, which would still leave this $4 million available. I would just caution, though, that is, of course, estimates based on what we think might happen with the casino experience next year.
Okay, Councillor Utley.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a great project, and I know there's some cost involved. But we've been talking about an arts center for many, many years, and we've never really gotten around to finding the right location or agreeing on where it should go, etc. And I see, and I thank Dr. Northwood for providing me with a tour, and I hope others on council also had a tour of the facility at One Market. It's an ideal, excellent location for what's being proposed. And if that doesn't bring people downtown, I don't know what will. It's got to have a huge impact, I would think, not immediately, but over time with the various activities and shows that would go on at this location. So I'm fully in support of it, and I hope we as a finance committee and as a council make this a reality. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Davis.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Yes, I'm also in favor of this, and I think it helps to remember the history here, which is the mid-sized performance-based task force that was headed up by Councillor Antosky. And I participated in a number of those meetings. It became very clear that the need from all the various cultural and arts groups in our community, there is a need for this mid-sized performance space. And the problem over the last decade has been, how do you do it? Because the cost of a standalone greenfield performance facility, I think the feasibility study said can be the order of 50 million, and with an operating deficit of $500,000 per year. And so the problem we had at the feasibility study was finding some way to do this in a way that our community could afford. And this is, various options were looked at. This is the most feasible option, but it also has the advantage of, I think, coinciding with what I believe will be the outcome of the Downtown Improvement Task Force, which is one of the things we need to do with our downtown is bring more people downtown for cultural events, entertainment events. More people downtown means a more vital downtown and also a safer downtown. So it meets a number of requirements. Also, the vision, if you've had a tour of Market Square and you've looked at what Laurier has contemplated, it's not just a student center. It's going to be a community center, a community hub. And within it, if this proceeds and determined that we can do it and we can raise the funds and fundraising and arts and cultural grants, etc., it'll be an important component of creating more community activity in this particular building. So I certainly can support this, and it's in line with council's decision to try and find a way of providing a mid-sized performance space and also to augment activity downtown. So I can support it.
Okay, seeing no further questions, we'll call the question.
Item 5.1.1 carries unanimously on a recorded vote. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Vanderstel, Councillor Utley, Councillor Martin, and Councillor Carpenter.
Okay, 5.1.2. Any questions or comments? Councillor Vanderstel.
Thanks again, Mr. Chair. F, that no relief from hardship be adopted for the residential farmland or managed forest property classes. Have we had people seeking relief from hardship in the past couple of years?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, not very many, but these are, this section is basically for sickness and extreme poverty. And council, I don't know what year it was, but it's got to be 5 years ago. Anyways, passed a resolution that gave this authority to the Assessment Review Board to deal with the any sickness and extreme poverty applications. So I would say that we probably get 1 to 2 a year, and we've, in the course of that, we've had a couple successful and a couple unsuccessful as well. It's a long process because we send the application off to the ARB. It probably takes 6 months from beginning to end. Once they set up the meeting and the hearing, they assign a chairperson to the event, and then the applicant has to provide all their financial information and if it's a sickness application, any medical history and doctor's notes as well. And I think that's part of the reason why we don't get very many is especially with the financial information they have to produce all that information. They are held in camera, so it's just myself, the chairperson from the ARB, and the applicant who are present at the hearings. And the last couple have been obviously been virtual, but we used to hold them in the council chambers before COVID.
So we haven't seen an uptake, Pat, or an uptick, I should say, since the onset of COVID, have we?
No, we have not. Sorry, through the chair, no, we have not.
Okay, thank you very much, Pat. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And although not relevant to the issues we're dealing with, I mean, we did have a delegation, and so I've got a couple of questions so that we're at least inquiring, given the concerns expressed to us, which are very real and of concern to Mrs. Rissy and Mr. Yates. So, Pat, obviously you've had some conversations with them. Have they considered appealing their impact assessment, or do you know if they thought about that or doing that?
Through the chair, it's my understanding they did appeal the assessment. There was a it's called a request for reconsideration that was filed with MPAC on the value. And there have been exhaustive discussions on that value. From the numbers that they gave me, or they gave the committee at the beginning, the only dispute I have in what they've said is the assessment on the old building was only around 300,000. He'd indicated 500,000 for that property. So the value went from 300,000 to 700,000. And hence the large increase in the taxes. The mix of commercial residential changed from 50-50 to 75% residential, 25% commercial. So it didn't double, taxes didn't double, but they did go from the around 8,000 to $12,000.
Right, so that's quite a increase in value, but we have nothing to do with that. It's MPAC. I assume because it's a brand new building compared to a building that had some age to it.
Through the chair, that's correct. There would have been I did talk to MPAC about this, and there would have been a considerable amount of depreciation on the old building that would have been factored into the value at the $300,000 value. The other building, there's two buildings there, and that were destroyed in the fire. The other one's the pizza shop. Its value was around 200,000, and it increased to 500,000. So the taxes on that property basically did the same thing, or even more. Went from about $5,500 to $12,000 as well on that one as well. It has a lot more commercial component assessment in that property. That's why it's higher.
The tax rate, which actually applies to some of what is in the report in terms of policy. I thought if the amount of proportion of residential went up and the amount of commercial went down, wouldn't that be beneficial in terms of reducing the taxes?
Through the chair, that's correct, and that's why the taxes didn't double from 8,000 to 16,000. If they both had gone up the same amount, it doubled, then that would have happened. Where I see the issue here is the residential component of this property went from about 150,000 to 500,000. And that's the taxes on that portion went from $2,000 to $7,000. That's where the big increase came from. The commercial portion went down, actually went from $6,000 down to $5,000 from 2017 to 2021. So it's not the commercial taxes that are causing the problem here. It's it was a large increase in the assessed value of the residential component.
Okay. That's very unfortunate for them. We're almost powerless to be able to deal with it. Is there any way we can provide any kind of relief for them? I realize we have nothing to do with how properties are assessed. That's MPAC, provincial corporation. But
through the chair, no, not specifically with an individual property, just tax policy overall.
Then I have a question, if I may, Mr. Chair, if I have any time left, that has to do with your report pattern. It has to do with page 4, and it's the tax ratios, the commercial, industrial, multi-residential. And so the commercial tax ratio is staying the same. And that's because there wasn't any increase in the amount of commercial properties. Can you explain that how that policy works?
Sure, through the chair. So the ratios for the non-residential classes, which are the commercial, industrial, and multi-residential properties, are reduced based on the amount of assessment growth that we have in the prior year. In this year, the commercial class did not have any assessment growth. It actually had a slight negative growth, and that's due to what impacts that is assessment appeals as well. You still have new growth, there are new buildings in the commercial sector, but we have lots of commercial properties that are appealing their assessment and getting reductions. They basically offset in 2021. So there is no growth, so there is no reduction in that ratio. And there was a slight increase in the industrial class, very minimal. Not really, it doesn't really impact anything. The largest increase was in the multi-residential class. It was a 7. get the right paper. I think it was a 7% increase in multi-residential assessment. And that was because of the two large apartment buildings on Park Road North there was minutes of settlement that I brought to council with a large increase on those properties. Plus the new building on Grand River Ave was also added in. So there was a considerable increase in that class, which results in a reduction of about 6%, because we do 80% of the assessment growth. So a 6% reduction in the tax ratio for that class. Ultimately, what that does is when you take all the mix and the shifting of all those ratios, is we're shifting. I'm going to find the right paper here. We're shifting about $12. This is on the average residential property, $12 to the average residential property for 2022. We're shifting, that's about 0.35% increase, and that's just attributable to the ratio reduction policy. We're also increasing commercial by about 0.35%, small increase to industrial 0.15%, and then again, the only reduction we're getting is 6% reduction in the average taxes on the average multi-residential property.
Has just one last question, if I may? Yep. Okay, then I'll put me down on the second speaking request. Thanks.
Councillor Utley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. How much of the 12,000 is commercial? Was that 75-25, Pat?
Through you, Mr. Chair. It is about $5,000 is commercial taxes. 7,000 is residential taxes.
Oh, that's a huge increase. Oh, yeah, that was pretty disturbing listening to their story and thinking they're doing the right thing and maybe not having all the information. I don't mean that as a criticism in any way. It's just an unfortunate situation for these people. And I almost feel a bit helpless that, the rules are the rules with taxes, and there's no wiggle room that I'm aware of anyway to help them. But anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat. We've been working with this for how long, Pat? You and I have been having this discussion with the Fraser and Rose's property in Ward 5. Has it been 2 years?
3, Mr. Chair. And no, I think the first you contacted me the first time. It was early in 2021. It was probably around the time we sent out the supplementary assessment bills on the new build.
Yeah, and council hasn't adopted any kind of policy for COVID relief or anything like that that would be able to assess them either, have we?
There was COVID relief in 2020, but and not in 2021.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to their reassessment, we have a no phase-in of property taxes to be adopted. Would a reassessment, if we had a phase-in policy, would that have any impact on their new assessed property taxes?
Sorry, Councillor Carpenter, I didn't get that question.
Oh, that's okay, Pat. So if we have a no phase-in of property taxes recommendation here before us that we're speaking to, if we had that in place, would that have some impact for them, some assistance?
Through the chair. So the phase-ins basically is an approach that we can adopt when there is a reassessment cycle. So when MPAC every 4 years goes through the reassessment of all properties, then there's that's where the phase-in comes into place.
Yeah, but when there's a new build or a new build because of a fire for this circumstances, there's no separate phase-in option that's allowed in the taxpayer's toolkit for us to be able to deal with these kinds of situations.
Through the chair, no, not in an individual rebuild, no.
No, but it could be on or it can't be on rebuilds in general.
Not that I'm aware of. I can do some further research, but I'm not aware of that.
Okay, now the other, would there be an option for them to as well to, I guess it's a $5,000 cost for the commercial unit. What would that commercial unit be? Do you have any, off the top of your head, what that would be if that was a residential unit?
Just very roughly off the top of my head, just maybe a little less than half.
Yeah, so that would save them 2,500 if they went back to residential there, wouldn't it?
If that, through the chair, if that was allowed, I mean, you'd have to look into the zoning, and it becomes what's allowed in that location. I'm not sure whether, but if it was allowed to be a fully residential, 100% residential, then yeah, the taxes would come down.
Do we have the ability to waive the interest fee paid for a time payment, or do we have ability to make arrangements with them for payment so we could waive interest so we could assist them along in any way?
Through the chair, yeah, there is no ability to waive interest. Once interest is added to the property, it becomes taxes, and taxes are not allowed to be written off. We work with property owners all the time with payment arrangements, and we try to do our best and go to all lengths to not have to go through a tax sale process if that's where we're getting to.
Yeah, it seems like the payments they're making now are like they're putting them farther and farther behind the hole because they're nowhere getting anywhere near catching up, is it, on this program?
Yeah. Through the chair, that's correct.
Yeah, and what's the length of time that we could do such a program where we would allow them, but we would not charge interest going further and set up a plan to pay off to get caught up? What would that time frame be, and what would the payment look like? What's our limit?
Through the chair, but we have no ability to not charge interest. We have to charge interest. It's bylawed by council. I mean, we bring a bylaw every year for the amount of interest we charge on all properties, so we can't not charge it on an individual property. I enter into payment arrangements with individual properties for a number of years. If the amount that they're making a payment is enough to bring down the amount of the outstanding taxes, I'm willing to. There is no limit that I can say that is legislated. I will work with any property owner as long as the amount that they're paying over time will bring down the outstanding tax arrears.
Yeah, and yeah, I know that, Pat. Thank you, because we've worked on a number of them and been successful, you and I, that way over the years. So I appreciate your candor, Pat, always, and thank you very much.
Okay, before I go to second time speakers, I had a couple questions. G and H are rebates for vacant land and vacant land waiting development. Are those percentages dictated by the province, or is that something that we can change?
Through the chair, G is the amount of the reduction for vacant and excess land. We already provide the minimum amount of reduction. It can be to anywhere between 30 and 35% reduction. We already provide only 30% for both commercial and it's only commercial and industrial property. So it's at both classes. It's the minimum.
Okay, and H?
Oh, sorry. H is for, farmland waiting development. So we don't have any properties in that class. H and,
okay.
Phase 1 and phase 2 of farmland awaiting development. There are no more properties left in that class. We only had a couple anyways for the longest time.
With the new lands coming into the city, will that become an issue going forward?
There is the potential for that. Yes, I'd have to look into that further.
And can we reduce the percentages there, or is that already the minimum?
That they would already be the minimum. Yes. Although the whole principle of this policy is to maximize the amount of the CVA and the taxes on the properties and get properties to their maximum CVA as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. Mary Davis.
There. Through you, Chair. So Pat, I always find this, it's always hard to get my head around this policy and these rates, right? And so my understanding is in 2015, there was a desire expressed through a policy decision, basically to bring the rates for commercial, multi-residential, industrial, so that they're closer to the rates for residential, to reduce the disparity between the two rates. Is that right?
Through the chair, that is correct. Yeah, the province, it's what's called a range of fairness. The province dictates that range of fairness to be anywhere between 0.9 and 1.1 tax ratios. Our council back in 2008 decided that we didn't want to go that far. For commercial, industrial, and multi-res, because they're businesses, and set a goal of 1.5, saying that property taxes can be written off as part of your income taxes, and that 1.5 really equates the taxes on a business property to a residential property.
Right. And so we aren't at 1.5 yet, but that's the eventual goal is for all these classes?
That is correct. The goal is 1.5 rate
Okay.
tax ratio.
And has the city ever in any particular year deferred it for a year?
Through the chair,
The
yeah.
adjustment.
Yes, that's correct. I think I'm going to say, if we go back to the original policy of 2008, that used to be a straight line reduction of tax ratios, which was, as you said, changed in 2015 to be contingent on assessment growth, but the policy was still there. And there were, I'm going to say, at least 2 years where the policy was, we didn't engage the policy for that year, one specific.
And what was the reason for suspending it those years?
If I remember correctly, I think they were large budget years, and I think council did not want to shift any more taxes on, because this policy always shifts taxes on to the residential class, and did not want to do that.
Yeah, so now it's coming back to me. So isn't this something we normally do at the end of the budget process?
Through the chair, no. Well, since 2000, and I'm going to say 2008, we've always done tax policy before we start the budget, so that when we give those updates during estimates committee, we can give you the impacts on those 4 individual tax classes.
But do we have to do it now, or can you still decide to do it at the end of a budget process for whatever reason?
Through the chair, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can. The goal is to get the tax bills out, final tax bills out by 1st of June, and get that. We just have to get all the bylaws passed in time by May, so we can get the tax bills out in June. So tax policy can happen during budget, before budget, after budget.
Okay, great.
Depending on how long budget goes.
Great. Thanks very much.
I just had one other question. The multi-residential class, is there more than one multi-residential class, or is it one?
Through the chair, there's 2 multi-residential classes. There's one we just call multi-residential, which is all the properties, all the multi-residential properties. Multi-residential properties are any property that has 7 or more self-contained units in the same property. Any older properties, I think, and again, it goes back to 2008, any properties built before then are considered to be multi-residential. And at that time in 2008, the province came out with a new property class called new multi-residential. And it was to encourage more development, to assist with more housing, and the ratio for that has to be only 1.1 of times the residential rate. So any new builds since 2008 all come in at this new multi-residential class, and the maximum tax ratio on those properties is 1.1. We have no flexibility there. We can go below that. We can't go above that. So there is a inequity between those older properties, which are still in the multi-residential class, and our tax ratio there is 1.8. And any new builds are only at 1.1.
And that's the new build rate is mandated by the province?
The new build tax ratio is mandated by the province. The maximum tax ratio is mandated by the province.
Okay, and we can't eliminate that class and force them into the other multifamily residence?
Through the chair, there was a time when we could, in 2017, the province forced all municipalities to have this class.
Okay,
But we took that, 2008, the city adopted that class ourselves. And then the province came along and said, it made it an option. Now the province has come on, it's mandatory to have that class.
okay, thank you. Seeing no further questions, we'll call the question.
Item 5.1.2 carries unanimously on a recorded vote. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Vanderstel, Councillor Utley, Councillor Martin, and Councillor Carpenter.
Okay, item 5.1.3. The question I have with that, we have the debt limit policies for other municipalities in the report, but it doesn't indicate where they are within that currently. And I thought that was something I'd asked for previously, but it's not part of this report. Do we have any idea how close these other municipalities are to their debt limits?
Yeah, to you, Chair Martin. We do actually have that information. So for the ones that are the comparators that are contained in the chart, now this would be based on 2020 financial information returns. It's the most recent information that we have for provincial reporting. Guelph is at 4.9. Chatham-Kent is at 4.8. Kingston is 7.5. Windsor is 2.1. Peterborough is 8.4, and they actually haven't submitted their 2020 FIR, so we had to go back to 2019 for them. Whitby is currently less than 1%, and Oshawa is 6.6%. The city is currently at 3.08.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, we'll call the vote.
Item 5.1.3 carries on a vote of 4-1. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Vanderstel, Councillor Utley, and Councillor Martin. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter.
Okay, and I believe that's all the items we had separated. Yep. Okay. There are no resolutions on the agenda, no notice of motion, which means we are now adjourned. Thank you, everyone.